You're watching once again a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. I'm Scott Veatch. I'm your host, and on this program we'll be discussing topics of interest for caregivers of loved ones with dementia. We hope that you will subscribe to the channel and you'll hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new program. And now, this is Once Again. Nancy Norton is my guest. She is with the Norton Law Office in Jackson, Wyoming. She has been an attorney for 30 years. She specializes in estate planning and elder law matters. And I hope you were with us for part one of this two-part interview. And we talked about a lot of things that we're going to continue talking about right now. We touched briefly on where you begin. Your family just received a diagnosis of dementia. We also talked about the PULSE form, the provider's orders for life-sustaining treatment. A lot of good information in there. We would hope that that you would go back and take a look at that interview as well. Nancy, thanks again. It's looking forward to doing part two of this. And we should also add the disclaimer too that if you're in a different state other than Wyoming, that it would be a good idea to seek legal counsel for matters if someone in your family has received a dementia diagnosis. Even if you're in Wyoming, it's always good to seek that professional help. That these are suggestions and recommendations that we're giving, that we're going to be covering today. So, wow, big introduction. Let's talk about, again, we get the family gets the dementia diagnosis. You said one of the things in part one was kind of the fork in the road is if there was prior planning. Let's say there has been prior planning. The family comes to you. Where do you go after that then?
So I would look at all of the documents that they had in place and make suggestions to the extent we could improve the ability of the agent, or if it was a trust, the trustee, to do certain things to make the person with the diagnosis have as many options as possible from a legal
Let me just
standpoint.
jump in here again. We talked about agent before, but if you wouldn't mind, tell us what you mean when you say agent.
Sure. Agent is a legal term, and it's the person who receives authority from the person who is, say, in this instance, has been given the diagnosis of dementia. So that's normally referred to as the principal. And the principal gives legal authority to the agent so that the agent can act on the principal's behalf when the principal no longer has capacity to make their own decisions.
That's usually a family member?
Usually a family member, it can be a friend, it can be, it could even be a bank or a trust company. They perform those services too, because some people don't always have family members that are equipped to serve as an agent. So in that case, you can hire a professional, and that's usually an employee at a bank or a trust company.
What about a life partner?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, you could have a life partner as well.
Okay. I'm sorry, I interrupted. You were talking about there are options available.
Yeah. So I think I was talking about having as many options as possible for the person who has the dementia diagnosis. So, for example, if down the line that person needs to go to an assisted living facility or a long-term care facility, that should be mentioned as something the agent can do on behalf of the person with dementia.
And what happens now if the family has not done any prior planning?
Well, I would say it's not too late, because normally when a dementia diagnosis is given, and I'm not a medical person, but it's quite possible that that person will still have some level of capacity to make a power of attorney for finances and a power of attorney for healthcare, including a living will And even, as we said in the last episode, a post form, a YO post form. So the issue of capacity isn't that it's once you get a diagnosis, you're done. It's something that's static. It varies during the day. It can, somebody can have some type of incapacity. But when, for example, they're making a will, if at that moment when they're signing their will, they have capacity, that is a valid will. And
Okay.
so an attorney would do a thorough review with the person who has the dementia diagnosis to see if that person had capacity. And if they do, they can make a will, a trust, and powers of attorney, and a living will, and a post.
Yeah.
If they don't, then we're looking at a situation where they may need a guardianship or conservatorship
Right.
or both. And those two things are on the court side of things. Those are always a guardian for somebody or a conservator is always appointed by the court.
And that's really can, excuse me, can be a tricky issue too. You know, when you get into, do they still have the capacity? Are they still able to make those decisions?
Right, right. And I think a recent example was Jay Leno.
Yes.
Uh, he went to court to get a guardianship for his wife because she did not have those documents in
Mm,
place. He wanted to step in and help her.
right.
But at that point in time, unfortunately, it appears that she didn't have capacity. So there had to be a court hearing
And,
to
and
allow him to get that guardianship.
and it's funny because you think someone famous and successful and reasonably well off, and they have to deal with these same things too, the same tricky issues, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me toss. We didn't talk about this, but what is your website? What is where can they find you?
So it's www.nnorton, Norton, law.com. So nnortonlaw.com.
And the reason that I ask that is so that people can find you, but also on your website, you talk about the ability to develop strategies to protect assets, avoid probate, and minimize taxes. And I think we're all in favor of those things. So when you have that diagnosis, the family comes to you. Is it too late to deal with these things, or can we still protect assets, avoid probate, and minimize
Yeah,
taxes?
no, we can definitely get things in order. If especially if there's capacity, even if it's waning, um, you, there are things that can be put in place to help. For example, titling assets so they're owned jointly is huge. So that would avoid probate. And so would a trust. If somebody had a situation where a trust made sense, then that would avoid probate. And then there are different strategies that can be used, especially between, say, a husband and a wife, where certain types of planning can be employed so that if there was an estate tax, that could be minimized or completely avoided.
Are these complicated matters? I mean, do they take a long time to iron out? How complicated is it?
Well, that's a good question, and I hate to say it depends, but it really does depend
Right.
on a lot of things, what somebody owns, how they own it, and the family dynamics can be a really big factor in how assets are passed on to, say, the next generation.
Hmm.
So it can be straightforward, and a lot of my clients will say, "Oh, I just want something simple." But then when you get into the details, you realize, well, it's not that it's hugely complicated, but it's not something that's straightforward either. So a lot of stuff sort of falls in that middle where it's not super simple or it's not hugely complicated, but it's somewhere in between.
Right, right. So I guess the common phrase that we hear is, you get the diagnosis, you need help, and someone says, you should really go see an attorney, but not just any attorney, right? I mean, there are specializations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this is where I think elder law attorneys can really help families, and because they know um, how to just bring up these topics. A lot of people don't like to talk about them.
Yeah.
And so I talk to a lot of my clients who are especially over 60. We talk about healthcare issues, we talk about housing, we talk about support networks that they have in the community. And in Wyoming, we're such a rural state. It's sometimes community resources can be hard to access. And so a big issue for a lot of people is, do I live near a good medical facility? Do I have good healthcare options where I live? And in my community, we have one long-term care facility and no assisted living. And so people have to make really tough choices as to where they're going to end up if they need it, if they need to move.
Right. Are there some specific documents that we should always have access to, specific legal documents, from our life experiences, so that if God forbid something should happen, I mean, what would you need to see? What should we have?
Well, I personally think everybody should have a healthcare power of attorney and a power of attorney for finances if you're over age 18 and you're completely healthy. And the reason is
Really?
because,
Over 18?
yeah,
Wow. Okay.
definitely. And
Hmm.
so a lot of kids going off to college, there's no thought ever given to the fact that, oh my gosh, they're going to be on a college campus, living away from home, maybe even in a different state. And mom or dad or another parent-like figure is going to want to interject if there's a problem. And you might need that power of attorney to show that you have the legal authority is as the parent or the guardian or other family member to help that young person. And that young person could be in an accident. I mean, we know accidents happen all the time. And so it's not just for when you get a really difficult diagnosis, it's any time in your life. Everybody should have these documents in place, I think.
Okay. You said something a couple of moments ago that I want to come back to. And you said, I thought it was encouraging. It's never too late to start, right? No matter what your situation.
Yeah, it's never too early. You
Okay.
can't be too early. Um, so I would definitely encourage you, even if you don't have a diagnosis, it doesn't run in your family. Um, Life can bring all sorts of twists and turns, and it can be really helpful in a dire situation that you might find yourself in to have powers of attorney in place. I think people can probably wait on wills, especially if they don't have children. So there's ways you can title assets to still avoid probate. But and a lot of young people, and by young I mean like 40s, um, they may not have accumulated much. So it distributing their assets isn't as vital, I think, as having an agent that can help you in a healthcare crisis, and also have access to funds that you might need that you may not otherwise be able to access because you have some type of incapacity. And incapacity can be temporary too. It doesn't have to be permanent. It can just be a temporary thing. You might have an accident where you're in a coma, but you come out of it and then you're fine.
Hmm.
So during that time, somebody can step in and manage your bills, so that you don't run behind on things like paying your bills and then have to deal with the aftermath of that.
One more thing.
Right.
My golly, Nancy, we're running short on time. I can't believe it. If if someone is in this situation and they are looking for an attorney who specializes in elder law, where do they find one? I mean, how do they do that? Is there a directory? Can they just Google Wyoming attorneys elder law, or what
Yeah.
how can they do it?
Well, I have two suggestions. You could definitely check out the Wyoming Bar Association,
Okay.
and they have an easy way to look up lawyers by specialty type. And you might have to do a little digging within the estate planning lawyers that are listed to see who does elder law. But then there's also another terrific organization, the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys, and I'm involved in that group. And they definitely have elder law attorneys listed all over the country. And so that's a great resource.
Jot those down. Nancy Norton has been our guest. She is available at nnortonlaw.com. She is with the Norton Law Office in Jackson, Wyoming. She is has been an attorney for 30 years, specializes in estate planning and elder law matters. Nancy, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we thank you for being with us, and we invite you to join us again next time on Once Again. You've been watching Once Again, a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. We hope, if you haven't done so already, that you'll subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new video. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Scott Veatch. We'll see you again next time.